Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about SurrealEstate Season 3, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first, there is a soldier, Robert. There's a house being haunted by a soldier who, and now it's about discovering, what era is he from, and they ultimately narrow it down that he's from Vietnam. But that's the thing of none of the previous owners ever went to war, were served in the military. Same thing for the current owners who've been living there for 11 years. So it's like, why now at any time is this happening? And the spirit's a guy named Robert, and obviously he's like trying to lead someone, because first the homeowner, then like when he runs into Susan, he's actually protecting her from a grenade, ends up checking on her later and kind of mistaking her for his dead buddy Pete when like a grenade or explosion goes off and she kind of gets knocked down. And then like at the end, he ends up kidnapping Augie and holding him, interrogating him of like, yo, where's the rest of them? Where's Charlie? Because I watched you kill my friend Pete. I want to know where you're at. Like holding, because it's really interesting, especially because we find out how it ties into Augie's story, because it turns out he had an uncle, was it Theo, who went to Vietnam, and he's never really talked about it. And ultimately, he's like, my uncle served like 1 year, and I always ask my dad, why was Uncle Theo not really around? It's like, well, he kind of wasn't around a lot of people because that experience changed him in a lot of ways, you know? And even Rochelle was like, why did, is that why working at Astra never worked with you? Like, because seeing like what war and weapons and killing, what it did to someone he knew, to the point he couldn't even see that family member anymore, knowing like what that does to a person's mind. And it's like, he's like, it's not all the reason, but it's part of the reason why, you know? And the fact is he's never shared that with Rochelle. Because, I mean, it's sad too, because they had a moment early in the episode, she came to drop off his lunch because he's been forgetting it more and more. And then she's asking about this device he's making. And she was kind of like, I don't think she meant it in a bad faith type of way. I think she meant it just joking with you. It's like, oh, have the girls from The Shining going through, the twins from The Shining going through menopause. And for him, it's like, I don't like walk up, like I keep a lot of my opinions about your killing machines. Like I want you to kind of like, I keep a lot out of myself. I don't make wisecracks. Like I appreciate if you didn't do that about my work in Russia. I was like, all right, enjoy your damn lunch, and left. And you know, Augie was kind of like, he recognized he messed up in that. He was just kind of, I think, dealing with a lot, and he was just taking out on her. It's just his frustrations with just Astra. And I mean, it seems like him and Rochelle are decently in a good place. It doesn't seem like the whole him leaving Astra thing, well, getting fired from Astra thing, didn't like interfere with the relationship like I thought it would. But I think it's still kind of this dangling guillotine above them in some ways. And I think him also trying to figure out like, well, do I even fit at Roman in Ireland anymore? Because they recap it too, where he just feels like I'm a luxury that Luke cannot afford. And it's just like, I think August is feeling a little out of sorts and out of place to some extent, antiquated in some capacities. But yeah, ultimately, getting back to the story itself, it is really heartbreaking, because he was super young. Obviously, it's like, I think they found out about his prom date, Lynn, and him finally remembering, like when Luke talks to him at the end of the episode. It's interesting too, because Augie the device he was working on was meant to be a device that kind of allows them to talk to spirits when Luke isn't around, kind of like their substitute Luke in a way. But like, yeah, this house meant a lot for Robert, because Lynette's house meant a lot, because when he wasn't on good terms with his dad, he could come stay over there. They cook meals for him. I always have a place at the dinner table. He'd even go outside and pass the ball around, like toss the baseball around, playing catch with Lynette's dad. They go on walks. And then it's just like, it's like he wrote her letters, but those became infrequent more and more as time went, like the more time he spent in Vietnam, because it's like that darkness was there and he didn't want to expose her to it. And it's just all that death and the killing and all the terrible things he saw and experienced and had to do, it rotted away with him, and he didn't want her to kind of drown in that too. And for him, it's like that heartbreaking thing where he's like, the war, I brought it back home with me. You know, and then him and Lynette having that moment where they finally get to just say goodbye to each other after all these years, you know, because she ended up finding someone else. She's actually a widow currently, but I think that is kind of the most important thing, to kind of be able to let go. And we found out like what was the inciting incident for him to pop up now is because it turns out like all these years later, there's some bodies that were discovered in Vietnam that were kind of being brought back to the U.S. A lot of unidentified soldiers. So one of those bodies most likely belonged to Robert. Maybe also like some of his colleagues, like some of those people like Charlie or Pete that he was referencing. So, but then on the other side of the episode, we had the situation with Luke, where Luke was, the moment he was looking for some houses and stuff like that, I'm like, we never found out, like, he was looking for somewhere, but we don't know what it was for. And I was like, is this related to Tyler? Because I thought Tyler was trying to lure him out into a secluded area to try and hijack his body. But he ends up finding, like, this little lodge, and he lost his keys. I was like, because at first I was like, did you lock your keys in the car? But he was like, no, I lost them. I was like, how'd that happen? You literally just got in a car. They couldn't have gone anywhere. But he gets inside of the house with a guy. It's a guy named Harry and his dog, Aramis. And the place is like, oh, place has a little bit of a TARDIS thing going on where it looks like, it looks bigger than on the inside than it does on the outside. I also didn't see you having a chimney on the outside. And the guy kept being like, the outside don't matter. The outside don't matter. You're like, okay, what's going on here? And it turns out both of them died. Harry was like a very much like a I don't like people thing, and because of like his bad health, bad drinking, his wife left him, his children kind of didn't really want anything to do with him, so he was kind of a lonely dude until like one day at the store, this dog Aramis jumped into his car, and they were like, he was like, I believed myself to be unlovable, and I found someone and something that loved me. So that was interesting. But what I wasn't expecting this storyline to turn into was he's like, I was sent by management. And I was like, what is that about? And it's like, oh, like from the great beyond, like management in that regard. I'm surprised Death never had this conversation with them. But I guess it's like, he's like, essentially they want you to know a lesson. Like when you live a certain way, you do things for long enough, you kind of start to assume you know what's best. And that kind of came up, I want to say in season 2, maybe it was season 1, but I could have sworn there was a case in particular where like Luke was so sure, like, well, this is how we respond to this. This is the best way. He was being like, just kind of assuming like he knew what was the answer, but ultimately learned it wasn't the case. And Harry's there to teach him, like, he's like, for me, like, I got all these books. I've got Aramis. I've got enough to keep me, friends, to keep me occupied for the next 17 forevers. So it is a thing of, you don't always have to worry about, like, you don't always have to, like, send a lot of spirits to the great beyond. Sometimes it is a situation of you don't always, it's like sometimes, like, listen. And once again, I thought he kind of got this lesson previously in a different season. So, like, Luke hadn't really strayed from that. Like, he has listened to people, but I think it's still the point of him ushering people to great beyond. It's like, well, you don't know everything. Don't think that you do. You're going to start thinking you do, but it's like, no, sometimes you just have to listen. Some people are perfectly fine being where they are, but there is also the danger of you stick around long enough, as he told that mom a couple episodes ago, like when she died and she was leaving her son to her sister, it was like, you know, it's like you might have the best of intentions, but you might stick around too long and start causing them pain. And it's just like, it is that complicated thing of who are you as the arbiter to kind of shuffle people along. And it's like, it's ironic too, considering like he does send someone along to the afterlife this episode. They're not telling him not to do it, but it's just a situation of that's not always the solution. So I'm surprised they didn't make the solution in this episode be like, well, I guess Harry was that example of not trying to help Harry move on because he's comfortable where he is. So it's interesting that he ended up being the messenger in all of this, even took Luke's keys just to kind of make a point. So I guess maybe this is also in the aftermath of like everything with, I'm sure it doesn't fully have to deal with the Megan thing, but it is interesting that this would happen like after the Megan episode. But we also find out later on he's got all these dealings with Tyler, and those dealings kind of do not coincide and do not support how Roman and Ireland operate. It's interesting too because Bob went to Susan at the beginning of the episode wanting to basically combine their businesses. He's like, I'm in a better place. I know things didn't work out between us, but when we were working together, it worked. It's like, yes, on a professional level, on a personal level, it was a tragedy. Nope, terrible. But he's like, no, we're in a better place. Go to Luke about this. We could do so much great stuff together. And obviously, Susan has all the reasons to be like, I'm not really vibing with this because you're not only my ex-boss, you're my ex-everything. And that was kind of like a, Staying on Susan really quickly, I am curious, was this like the anniversary of her mom's death or something? Because like Tag was like, I'm sorry for your loss. I guess maybe it's a situation of Tag is like learning more and more about Susan, and maybe he only just found out, like, oh, you lost your mom. I didn't realize that. Because I mean, he obviously hasn't been working with them too long, so that he's probably only just learning that. So maybe that's what it was. Because they didn't bring up any other reference to like it be, well, Bob did, but it's because him and Susan haven't seen each other in a long time in the time frame like her mom has passed. So I do think that's interesting too because of well, I'll finish the thought I was having about like, right, like, could the messaging from like Harry and management have come because of the whole like Luke is kind of feeling lost, like, about his life and everything that he does. So it is kind of interesting where like not just on like the supernatural side of work, even though it ties into just the everyday real estate element of his work, it just feels like he's a little like not sure what his life is going to be because so many other people have kind of figured things out, and he's seemed so certain for so long what he was going to do and what he was going to be, and now it's like I'm not so certain. So maybe some of that conversation flows into that because Susan confronts him later on when it's like, whoa, you're working with Tyler to do this and that. It's like, that's not what we do. We're there for our clients to find them homes, not work with some big corporation. Because it's like, we're kind of a mom and pop type of real estate business. We keep it small and we're an intimate connection with our customers and our clients, and being a part of a conglomerate is kind of this nasty machine that will just like not take the tender and care that we've always approached. Because like for Susan's like, that's why I love this job, that's why I love working with you, we're supposed to be partners, and you were making this decision behind my back. And he was like, no, like I didn't say yes, I was going to bring it up. But it's like the moment Tyler broached it to you, it shouldn't even been a conversation of, oh, let me talk to Susan. It should have immediately been like a no. And even Susan, I think she's all, because she also was coming off the Bob conversation, because she was like thinking about things and she saw Bob's name and she's like, you know what, Bob, no, I trust Luke, we're not doing that. And obviously pissed her off enough to like set fire to his little pamphlet or whatever, which caught the curtain on fire, which leads to some firemen showing up. Ironically, a fireman and a pyrokinetic, like kicking it off and hitting it off. It's kind of interesting. But it's also interesting too because it does feel like they're setting up because obviously it's super clear that Tag likes Susan. Even Lomax brought it up like an episode or two ago. She was like, oh, it's super obvious that dude's crushing on you. And this entire episode, he's like, yo, how are you doing, Susan? She's like, oh, it's very nice of you to ask. Like, just the conversation beats he has with Susan. He's like, oh, I threw in the Viking helmet, just to add some humor. I've been told I'm humorless. And she's like, no, I thought it was funny. And so to have that happen in the same episode where her, like I said, her ex everything, Bob, shows up, and then also her hitting it off with that fireman named Charlie. Well, his name's Crash. And so they're gonna like go out for dinner. So it is that thing of the moment you stop looking is when life kind of like throws a lob your way, and it's just, or lay up your way and be like, yeah, like, the moment you stop looking is when love has a tendency to smack you in the face type of situation. But I know that's going to lead to complications because Tag super is into her, and that's probably going to get extremely complicated as we go forward, because I'm sure her and the firefighter are going to really like hit it off. So yeah, but like circling back to Luke really quickly, you do have like him and the Elvis situation, which is interesting. I wonder, did Elvis the elephant have the same effect on him when he was a kid as it has now? Because it seems I don't know if that's just the natural residual elements from when that thing was in that stuffed animal that's doing that, or did he purposely do something to it? Because it does feel like it is slowly but surely like wearing down Luke. And maybe that has something to do with why Luke was so okay with like taking Tyler's job. Because like he is fighting back. Like last episode or episode before last, when Tyler tried to really get to him, he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's like, what are you doing? So it's not, but I don't know if, like I said, his defenses seem to be wearing down because he's hugging the elephant, and every time he stares at it, it seems like it gets him in a trance, but then he snaps out of it. But then him hugging it at the end makes it feel like, it almost seems like it's regressing him back to a child in some ways. I guess like maybe with everything going on, and maybe the stress of it all, and Luke just feeling, like I said, lost, maybe it's meant to kind of make him feel comfortable, but his dependence on it and his like hugging it is kind of seeping in and like rendering his defenseless useless. I don't know. they also have, because Tyler's SO, I think they're exes now. I think they split. I think so. She was looking for Luke, but talked to Augie about, like, yo, Tyler's obsessed with Luke. Then he ended up talking to Susan about it, which Susan then confronts Luke about everything at the end of the episode. So I'm curious to see how Luke handles the Tyler situation going forward. I'm sure Tyler's going to rein him back in because of the whole Elvis toy, Elvis the elephant, like, stuffed animal. I'm sure that's going to play a role in Tyler being able to kind of like drag him back, like, oh, you're going to try and get away, but it's like, no, come on, Luke, we're in business together, and sway him more and more, kind of bring him to the dark side in a lot of ways. So we'll have to wait to see how that plays out, how that whole situation turns out going forward. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.